the reason why the Bible has these pictures of God as a good shepherd, as someone who sits above the circle of the earth, it gives us these pictures to understand the nature of the being we cannot fully grasp while living in this present life. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Two questions that this passage of Scripture asks out of like 25 questions. You can turn to Isaiah 40. I was thinking about this passage, especially the last few verses of Isaiah 40. It talks about those that wait upon the Lord. And we memorize that passage, probably most of us. And it can probably have a lullaby effect. We've heard it so often. We know it's talking about good stuff, and we know it's talking about waiting. A lot of good things there. But in the context of the rest of this chapter, it's beautiful, and it adds a lot more weight to it. And actually, Isaiah 40 asks a lot of questions. And I'm not going to try to answer them all this evening or try to figure them out. I want them to be questions. It doesn't give all the answers here in Isaiah 40, but it asks the questions. And I think too often we live in the West, we're used to systematic theology. We're used to terms, and if we would if we would pick apart Isaiah 40 here, we could say, okay, the first part is talking about the omnipotence of God, and the omniscience, and part of it here in the middle is talking about his omnipresence, and we have these theological terms. But the Bible doesn't use those terms. What the Bible uses to describe God, it uses pictures. It paints a picture of who God is. And as we develop theology, we put terms to that, like, oh, that's God's omniscience, that God's omnipresence. He's everywhere at once. I'm going to use a quick analogy here. Need a blanket for it. Take this blanket, and this is not God, but I'm just going to put this over this. And what the pictures of the Bible, like God is like a good shepherd. God, he cares for us. He loves us. He has a lot of pictures of who God is, and that describe him. And it's kind of like looking at this veil, looking at God, and we can't totally see him, see his essence, because we're physical creatures. And so it's like looking at the shape of God underneath all of these pictures and trying to understand the nature of the being who is veiled behind the blanket of this material life that we're living in. What theology does and terminology does is which it can be good, but it's like looking at that cloak that covers God, and it's like picking apart like little strands of thread and like analyzing, okay, this is cotton or whatever. It's kind of like getting into nitty-gritty stuff, whereas the reason why the Bible has these pictures of God as a good shepherd, as someone who sits above the circle of the earth, it gives us these pictures to understand the nature of the being we cannot fully grasp while living in this present life. So, I know that's just kind of an analogy I was thinking about yesterday. I don't know if it really makes sense. But I want to, as we're going into Isaiah 40 here, think about all the questions it asks. Think about the pictures it uses to describe God. And I have a question as we go into this. How can we know God? How can we know his essence? If part of our understanding of him comes from these pictures and these things that we describe God as, part of the way we know God is through these things. But how do we actually know his essence? How can we actually know God above and beyond these things? Because God is above and beyond every image and every picture and every story that we have about him. Because those things just describe an aspect, a tiny little bit of God. And he's so much bigger. So how can we know God? Think about that. And I'm not going to try to answer that. It's wrestle with this. All right. Comfort. Yes, comfort my people, says your God. Speak comfort to Jerusalem and cry out to her that her warfare is ended, that her iniquity is pardoned, for she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. The voice of one crying in the wilderness, prepare the way of the Lord, make straight in the desert a highway for our God. Every valley shall be exalted, every mountain and hill brought low. The crooked places shall be made straight, and the rough places smooth. The glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Do we believe this? Here's a question. It's not a question from this passage, but it's a question I'm asking. Think about, do we believe this? This is talking about John the Baptist, Jesus, the coming of Christ. It says in the New Testament that Jesus is the fullness of the Godhead bodily. What does that mean? If God is so much greater than matter and physical existence, how could God be present bodily in a human? Again, I'm not asking you to answer this question. Just think, wrestle with it. The voice said, cry out. And he said, what shall I cry? There's our first question. What shall I cry? And he kind of goes on to a whole rest of the passage of crying, crying out here. All flesh is grass, and all its loveliness is like the flower of the field. The grass withers, the flower fades, because the breath of the Lord blows upon it. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers, the flower fades. But the word of our God stands forever. What does that mean? The word of our God stands forever. It seems to be telling us that the word of God is something that endures above matter, above the physical things of life. The word of our God stands forever. O Zion, you who bring good tidings, get up into the high mountain, O Jerusalem. You who bring good tidings, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, behold your God. Behold, the Lord God shall come. We believe this too. Think about this. Yes, we can say he has come. He will come. But this is something that my soul resonates with. Behold, the Lord God shall come. Do we believe this? Past, present, and future. With a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. Here's a description of something God does. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs with his arm and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those who are with young. Here's a beautiful picture of what God does. And you can say also of who God is, because he says, I am the good shepherd. My sheep hear my voice, and they follow me. So this is part of his essence, but it's not all of his essence. But look at the contrast here. It's the contrast of a shepherd, of someone that's gentle. And look at the next description of what God does. It's so much more radically wild and fierce and different than this previous description. It says, who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand? And this is a statement. Measured heaven with a span and calculated the dust. Or I guess it's asking this as a question. It's saying, who can do this? Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, measured the heaven with a span, and calculated the dust of the earth in a measure, weighed the mountains in scales and the hills in a balance? Who has directed the Spirit of the Lord, or as his counselor has taught him? With whom did he take counsel, and who instructed him and taught him in the path of justice? Who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? Here we see another comparison, saying, who calculates the dust? And it's kind of a rhetorical question. It wants you to answer this. Who has done this but God? Is what it's implying. Who can do this but God? And it's interesting, if God calculates the dust of the earth, he weighs, he measures, he knows the amount of. The Hebrew word here in verse 5, one of the Hebrew words for like calculating and understanding the amount of is tachan. And the next verse, verse 13, it says, who has directed, or the ESV actually says, who has measured the Spirit of the Lord? Who has tachan, the Spirit of the Lord? And it's the same word that's used to say who has measured, the one who measures the dust and all of that stuff. So if God measures the earth, he measures everything in it. He measures matter, substance, being. But who can measure? Who can understand what makes up God? Who has measured the Spirit of the Lord, understood, directed, or as his counselor has taught him? With whom? Look at all these questions here. Think about this. With whom did he take counsel, and who instructed him? By asking this question, it's also asking, it's asking who has done this, but does it even need to happen? Does God even need instruction? The end of verse 14 says, who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? Who? It answers this question at the end of this chapter. Keep that in mind. Who taught him knowledge? Who showed him the way of understanding? Remember that. Goes on to another description. Behold, the nations are as a drop in a bucket and are counted as the small dust on the scales. Look, he lifts up the isles as a very little thing. And Lebanon is not sufficient to burn, nor its beast sufficient for a burnt offering. All nations before him are as nothing, and they are counted by him less than nothing and worthless. It's asking a question. Does God really need sacrifice? This whole region of Lebanon and all of the animals that live there, it's saying, it's not even like God doesn't need this sacrifice. It's just a very little thing to God. So here's a question I want us to wrestle with too. What good is sacrifice? If God's essence is so much above and beyond who we are, why? Why sacrifice? Why does he need sacrifice? Think about this. Your holiness, your lifestyle, your person, your sin, whatever it is, does not affect in any way the nature of God. Because God is who he is. He's holy. He is grieved at sin. He desires our sacrifice, but why? Why? Because it doesn't change anything about him. Just think about that question. So verse 18, to whom then will you liken God? Or what likeness will you compare to him? If God is so beyond our comprehension in so many ways, what are we going to compare him to understand him? What likeness will you compare him to? Some people try this next method here. It says the workman molds an image, The goldsmith overspreads it with gold, and the silversmith casts silver chains. Whoever is too impoverished for such a contribution chooses a tree that will not rot. He seeks for himself a skillful workman to prepare a carved image that will not totter. This is how some people cope or try to understand God as they perceive him. Make an image. Make something. The problem seems that an idol reduces God to the thing. This is God. Whereas a picture, we have pictures in here of what God does, of what God's like. That's not an idol. It's because a picture of God and even nature itself describes aspects of God. That's the difference between a picture of who God is and an idol. An idol is when we reduce God to the thing we're worshiping. A picture, even words sometimes, can be ways of understanding an aspect of God. And so it's a different perspective. That's why idolatry is so evil. It reduces God to a thing, to something small. But there's a couple more questions here. Verse 21, after it says, this is what some people do, make an image, whether gold or wood. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them out like a tent to dwell in. He brings the princes to nothing. He makes the judges of the earth useless. Scarcely shall they be planted, scarcely shall they be sown, scarcely shall their stalk take root in the earth. When he will also blow on them, and they will wither, and the whirlwind will take them away like stubble. To whom then will you liken me? Or to whom shall I be equal, says the Holy One? Who? Have you not known? It's this. God is so much bigger than anything, than even the pictures that we use to describe him. He's so much beyond that. And this passage is so broad because it talks about the intimacy of a shepherd caring for his sheep to the ruler of all things, of everything. Verse 26, lift up your eyes on high and see who has created these things. It's beyond the picture. It's beyond nature. It's beyond the stars. Who brings out the hosts by number? He calls them all by name. By the greatness of his might and the strength of his power, not one is missing. He's all-knowing, all-encompassing. And Isaiah 40 here uses these pictures to describe that. It could have just used a couple sentences for Isaiah 40 and said, God is omnipresent. And that would have summed up a lot of this. But no, think about. It's asking these questions because it wants us to wrestle with this. What is God really like? What can we compare him to? This past week, the last 5 verses of Isaiah 40 have stood out to me and kind of been speaking to me. Especially the 2 questions here in verse 27. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over by my God? In light of all of the things that we see about the nature of God, why do we say this sometimes? I find myself saying this. Do you? Do you ever say this? Have you ever said this in the past? My way is hidden from the Lord. Maybe we don't say it in those words, but my just claim is passed over by my God. Does God really see? Does God really understand? Does God really know what I'm going through? Does He not see? By all physical appearances, it seems like God isn't paying any attention. Why? And this question is questioning the question. It's questioning the question. If you've asked that, step back one step and ask, why? Why are you saying that? In light of all of these descriptions of aspects of the essence of God, why? Why do I say, God doesn't see me? God doesn't seem to care. And it's not saying don't ask those questions. We go through times in life where we do ask those questions. We need to ask those questions. Why? Why does it seem like God isn't watching? But it's not saying don't ask those questions. It's saying, why are you asking those questions? Dig a little deeper. Why do you say, O Jacob, and speak, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my just claim is passed over by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard? The everlasting God, the Lord, the Creator of the middle earth, the Creator of the ends of the earth, the all-encompassing creation, neither faints nor is weary. His understanding is unsearchable. Here's the answer to that question that was asked earlier. Who taught him knowledge and showed him the way of understanding? His understanding is unsearchable. Way beyond our own understanding. He gives out of this all-encompassing, amazing understanding. He gives power to the weak. And to those who have no might, He increases strength. Even the youths shall faint and be weary, and the young men shall utterly fall. The youths, the young men. Who's that? That's me. That's me. I feel weary sometimes. The young men shall utterly fall. We get discouraged, and you don't even have to be a young man. I think at any stage of life, you feel this weariness, heaviness, discouragement, fear. What's the answer to this? But those who wait on the Lord, those who wait on themselves in anxiety. No. Those who wait, and as they're waiting, try to figure out another step that they can take. Those who wait and spend themselves into circles trying to figure out the future. No. Those who wait on the Lord. Wait on the Lord. Shall renew their strength. This isn't just talking for weaklings that have never had strength, that don't know what it's like to figure life out. This shall renew their strength. It means that you have had strength. You've known what strength has been like in your life, and now you're feeling the loss of it. You're feeling it's departed from you. You're feeling the cares and the discouragement of the strength once there, now gone, or leaving, in the process of leaving. But it says, those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. This strength will return to them. And it's better strength than what they had previously. It's better strength than we could ever have in our youth, in the energy of childhood, where you can play all day long, and the next day you're not sore at all. It's better strength than that. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint. Mount up with wings like eagles. How effortlessly does an eagle just, when they step out off of a branch and just spread their wings and it's just nothing below them. Exhilaration. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. It's an exhilarating feeling of freedom. And run and not be weary. How many of you have run in the past? I don't particularly enjoy running, but how many run? Okay, or have run? There's kind of an aspect of it, it's like a love-hate thing. I kind of enjoy it, and it's also really annoying. And you have to work up to get strength. And I've been running before actually the other week we were out at the beach with some friends, and we started off at the shoreline, and then this tide was all the way out, and we went racing out to the water, and we pretty much stayed neck and neck the whole way, and I was just flat out running as fast as I could. And later when I was looking at my footprints, I should have been pumping my legs faster, but I was taking giant leaps, like from like the piano bench to like there is how the distance between each steps, it's like boom, boom, and both of our steps were like that wide long. But after we got out there, a couple, like 10 seconds after I stopped running, I was like, and then someone was talking to me, and I couldn't get my breath to talk to them. I've never been there. It's annoying. But it's a run and not be weary. Imagine just that flat out running. And wait, I can just do this. I could go miles, not get exhausted. And these are pictures here of the strength that comes to those who wait on the Lord. They shall walk and not faint. Often if you're trying to get somewhere quickly and you don't have quite the stamina that it takes to get out there flat out running the whole way, what ends up is you run half the way till you get exhausted, and then you have to just walk because you're too tired to run anymore. They shall walk and not faint. It's not exhaustion. This is a picture of what it means to wait on the Lord. Think about these questions as this coming week. Just a few of the main ones. How can I know this all-encompassing God? How can I have a relationship with His essence of who He is? Well, understanding that all the pictures that we have aren't enough to describe Him. How can we know God? Another question to think about. What good is our sacrifice if He's so much higher above all of who we are, and our righteousness or sinfulness or sacrifice doesn't change His nature in any way? It sounds like a dangerous question, but what good is our righteousness? What good is us being righteous? What good is there in us offering a sacrifice and worshiping? There's an answer somewhere. Wrestle with it. And then think about these two questions that are asked twice in here. In verse 21, have you not known? Have you not heard? And that describes God high and lifted up in majesty above the earth. And then it repeats it again, verse 28. Have you not known? Have you not heard? Think about how this passage answers those questions. And wrestle with that. All right. God bless you guys. Run. We're called to run and not be weary. That happens through waiting. It's hard to wait. So, God bless you.